Good.
Well, I'll be like talking to looking at it. Yeah. Rolling? Cool. So yeah, I did a thing on this a while ago, which is about positional dominance, and like what signifies what the dominant and inferior position. And there's all kinds of different criteria. So some people will be like, it's clearly not as cut and dry as, oh, well, if you're on top, then that's a more dominant position than if you're on bottom. Because, there's always those orientations where you're stuck in somebody else's high close guard and that's not dominant. Or different stuff where someone's on bottom, but they're in a position where they have like a ton of sweep or submission opportunities, and that's clearly a more dominant position than the person on top is. So it's never black and white, but there's different kind of continuums through which to think about inferiority and dominance. One of which being submission opportunity. So yeah, there's some times where someone is on top, maybe they can add more pressure, but the person on bottom has more submission opportunity. So there's a lot of Yeah, like leg lock orientation, some like positions that are conducive to guillotines, or close guard's a good example in some respects of that kind of thing. There's also ability to generate force. So if I am generate force upon the other person, so if I'm on top and side control, clearly I can drive off with my legs, I can use my shoulders, I have gravity, that's kind of cool, even though I'm buck 26 right now, I at least have gravity. I have my arms to squeeze them and add on to that gravity. And they on bottom, they can buck their hips a little bit, they can flare with their arms, they might try to squeeze my head or something, but in terms of who can generate more force applied to the other position, clearly that's another continuum to consider. That explains also why mount would be an ideal position to be able to work from. I mean, mounts, a lot of different ways to apply force. My entire body sitting on my opponent, etc. I have all my limbs to crank away on them, and generally speaking, they just have their arms to be able to defend. So, submission opportunity and ability to generate force. There's also movement potential, relative movement potential. So generally, as the movement potential of one player goes down, the movement potential of the other player also goes down. So if I just pull guard, my opponent's standing, which has happened many a time, we both have pretty open movement potential. I can go upside down, do crazy stuff, I can scoot around, I can stand back up, they can stay standing, they can try to cartwheel pass. There's infinite movement potential on both sides. When I'm put into a half guard, if I'm put into a half guard where my opponent has an underhook on the far shoulder, a nice crossface, and I'm more or less flattened to the mat. Now granted, he can't really move around quite as much as he could when he was up and dancing about, but his relative movement potential, mine went down maybe 7 points, his went down maybe 4. So he's still on top, so he has more movement behind him, and he also is kind of dictating my motion much more than I'm dictating his. So his relative movement potential and his relative ability to take initiative is greater than mine. That is part of the reason why knee on belly could be considered to be more dominant in some respects than traditional side control, is because not only can I still apply all the force of my body now through my knee, and I have all the submission opportunities with my limbs, but in addition to that, I have a butt ton of movement potential. If I'm knee on belly, I can dance to the other side very quickly. I can transition and mount. I can spin to the back. I can fly into different submissions because I'm up and nimble. So knee on belly, again, relative movement potential. When I'm on knee on belly, I can still move less than I could when I was up and my opponent was up in a neutral position. But relatively speaking, in a knee on belly position, my relative movement potential is way greater than my opponent's. So submission opportunity, ability to generate force, movement potential. These are just different continuums to think about what's dominant, what's inferior. Another one that's grossly overlooked, in my opinion, is relative skill in the position. So people often will say, man, I don't really like the 50-50 because it's called the 50-50. He has the same stuff you have. But if you've repped the 50-50 like 8 billion times, and he's repped the 50-50 like 4 times, then your relative likelihood, although even if we're totally, even if me and my opponent were here, I have no weight on him, he has no weight on me, like movement potential, even. Ability to generate force, even. Relative submission opportunity, objectively, even. Relative skill level. If my opponent is, let's say, just like somebody who just owns the 50-50, then they may very well take my leg off and I don't really want to be there. If there's somebody who, in this particular position, I happen to be better than, then the advantage now goes to me. And it's not even general category specific, it's real position specific. Yeah. So it might be like, I might be rolling with somebody whose leg locks might be a ton better than mine. Like overall, in terms of who they've leg locked, like they teach leg lock seminars everywhere. They're just the man of leg locks, but for some reason, they just never really trained the 50. And me particularly, let's say I trained specifically on the 50-50 for a long time, they might be like, oh, but he's really good at leg locks. It's really how good he is at the 50-50, you know? It's like, oh, he's really good at half guard. Well, he's in deep half guard right now. How does he do there? You know, that's kind of what matters. Like, I suck at the deep half guard. This is probably going to go online, too, and now I'm going to, you know, that's like as close as I'll get to
you can get swept
on the internet. Yeah. But that's the idea is that, you know, like, I'm okay at the half, like, especially when I can start to play, like, this kind of game.
Yeah,
and,
like,
you know, I have other half
yeah.
guard games I like and stuff, but when I get stuck in deep half guard, I get like mounted triangle every single time. Or like inverted arm bars, like stupid stuff I never get caught in. So again, the continuums to think about dominance and inferiority, and no concepts are closed, by the way. So there might be other continuums we could look at potentially, but probably the four that I think are most important are going to be relative submission opportunity, objectively, right? Like objectively, from the closed guard, the guy on top objectively really doesn't have that much submission so long as the ankles stay like this behind him. He just doesn't have it. The guy on bottom has more. Then we can talk about force generation. Now, you know, we could argue the person on bottom, the closed guard, has all their limbs to work with. The person on top has their weight to use. So force generation might be relatively even in that kind of a situation. Then we have movement potential. So you look at the relative movement potential of some people. Two people in closed guard, they're both relatively limited. That might be about even. If someone's on top in side control or in a really crushing dominant half guard, they might have more movement potential. If they're stuck in a really crappy half guard where they're about to get swept and the only move they have is to post this arm, otherwise they're going to get swept, well, then their relative movement potential might even be less than the person underneath them.
Yep.
So we've got submission opportunity, ability to generate force movement potential, and then relative skill in that position. So it's not how good you are at half guard, it's how good you are in the half guard you're in, deep half guard, whatever it is. It's not how good are you at leg locks, it's how good are you at knee bars when you've backstepped from top half guard. If that's the leg lock you're in, then, I mean, you could be the nastiest heel hooking mofo in town, but if it's IBJJF and that's the leg lock you're going for, it's really how good you are at that one. So when I think about where I want to be with various opponents, I think about those things. And the skill aspect is one big thing to think about. What have you drilled? What have you got your 10,000 reps in on compared to what he's got? And even if it's a position that seems neutral, you might still have the advantage. For example, you know, the easiest example that everybody gets, for some reason this doesn't transfer to the 50-50, but in one example everybody gets is stand-up. There's some people that just don't really like doing takedowns. Some people that really like doing takedowns. Everybody gets, oh, he's good at takedowns, pull guard. But in other positions where it seems more even, people say, you know, everybody has the same thing there. It's really who's better at that specific thing. So those are my little philosophical breakdown on the four continuums of dominance and inferiority